Yes. Now I feel bad that I've gone, doesn't matter. So the idea really is that, so one of the ideas is that you could potentially take them out to say a little stream, Bernard, in your environment and collect some data that's about that stream, and then maybe, so teach them how to process and present that data from that, say, small stream that they can perhaps stomp around in, or collect some water samples or whatever to kind of get them a bit familiar. And then potentially you could look at the Grey River in its totality, and think about that as its environment. So and again, you could go out on a field trip, wouldn't be too much of a drama to kind of get down to different parts of the river and look at some different things, but supplement that with some secondary data.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that could work really nicely. So you could do a bit of both, but the emphasis is on exploring an environment, not the data.
Not collecting the data, but yeah.
You can provide them with some data, you can supplement some data that they have. And then the thing that they have to do is they have to talk about how the data helps them to understand the environment and helps strengthen their understanding of the environment. So if they had some data, let's just say you got some data from the stream about pollution in the Grey River over time, say, there might be a trend, for example. So the students might plot that in as a line graph, and then they would be able to see that that would be a strength of the data because it tells them some longitudinal stuff about the river. Whereas maybe taking a photo of some rubbish in the stream or the river might be limiting their understanding because it's a one point in time kind of idea. So think about, so the strengths and limitations bit is about how the data helps you to understand or not the environment. Okay, does that make sense? So it's a bit of a twist on, it's different from 1.5.
Right, yeah, it is. And I was thinking also about talking to some local fishermen or the people that come and go white baiting, because it's quite interesting that if you talk to people, you see people white baiting in the river, but if I talk to people around the school or in the community, most people won't buy their white bait from the Grey River.
Right.
And so, and there's this connotation of it's not as clean as the other rivers further south because of the land use around the river, and some people talk about how much it's changed due to the practices that are happening on either side of the river. So that could be good as well, but not in the assessment.
No, you could have that because that's good data. So the data from the fishermen in the stream, talking to them could be really useful.
Oh, okay, could be.
Yeah, so that's qualitative data. And then maybe talking to somebody in the staff room, well, I won't eat any of that white bait from that river, it's filthy. That's also some data that could be useful to help students explore that environment.
Right, so we could have people in to talk to the students.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
So keep when you're thinking about 1.2, the emphasis is on the capability that NZQA are testing, which is exploring an environment and understanding that environment rather than what we currently do. So keep that in mind. So I would be making sure that before I do this standard, that you give students lots of opportunities to explore other environments. Okay. So let's say, for example, Pip, I can see you are here, so you might explore Oamaru and give the students some data about what data would you need to really understand your town or your city. You would need some data about climate, some data about some weather patterns, some data about coastal erosion on the beach. You might have some data about population, the demographics, the structure of the society, when was the place set? So looking at kind of an environment and really using that to help you explore a place, an environment, so they can get kind of a sense about, oh yeah, that data is really useful because, or this data is not. So if we're looking at a town, say Greymouth, for example, Bernard, you might have some population data from what the population was like in 2020, 2021, 22, 23, but hopefully the kids would be able to see that that's not actually enough to really get an understanding about what's going on in Greymouth, if you like. Does that kind of make sense?
So would they be using that data in the assessment when they talk about, oh, this is not enough data? So they would actually be writing that in the assessment then?
So
this data is not enough. Yeah.
So they have to present, they have to process and present some data. So the data might be, let's say it's climate data, say for Greymouth. I'm going to suggest that perhaps there's quite a lot of rain in Greymouth. Although last time I was there, it didn't rain. And I can guess it's not raining now, Bernard, because I'm seeing you looking out the window. But
well, I could just have the light on coming from that way. But yes, it's actually not raining. And it doesn't actually rain as much as people think.
Yeah.
I used to live in Christchurch and always I thought it rains all the time, but it's actually when the sun comes out, it's beautiful.
But
it does rain a lot though.
Yeah. So you
love how he says when the sun comes out.
It probably rains more where I am. But so giving students some information about, say, the climate of Greymouth, for example, the temperature and things, give students lots of opportunities to learn how to process and present data before they do the standard. So they have to process some data and present some data. So if you give them some climate data, for example, you would give them a table, say, of rainfall and temperature data, and they could use that to create a climate graph of your environment. So make sure in your program that you teach them the skills that they need to be able to, if you like, process and present. So, for example, on the Water Geography Teachers website, I've just popped some things. Actually, I didn't put you guys over there. So I've put a list of what they have to do. The standard asks people to process and present data. And so prior to it, processing and making sure kids know that you have to process it, manipulate it in some ways, and then present it. And here you might do these kinds of things. So the students have to present the data. They have to make the data their own, not just a photograph. So they have to use a photograph to show how something might happen. So I've got a couple of examples. So like, here's a photograph that's been annotated. So the kids don't just shove in a photograph. This one, that actually is a terrible picture. It hasn't come out particularly well, but it's been annotated in such a way. And then what the students have to be able to do is they have to refer to the annotated photograph. Shows the impact that waves had at Obewa Beach, blah, 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 blah. And preferably refer to some data. Does that make sense?
Yes. So a question I had about that is, so they don't have to be drawing it. They could put the data into something like Excel and then get Excel to create, because you can actually just have those things create the graph for you. Is that okay to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. But they need
to teach them how to do that. They might not know how to do it. So yeah,
teach them how to do it. I mean, you might do it by hand first, and if you don't have something like that in your social studies program, then maybe using Excel, whatever, and then they need to be able to create it themselves. You're not really marking their graph construction or their annotated photograph and how well they've done it, but that you're checking to see that they have processed and presented some data.
Okay.
and refer to it. So in the standard, it talks about referring to that. So there are a couple of examples of how they could refer to data. So when you're thinking about it, I think these are the kinds of things that students would be processing and presenting.
Mary, we're doing a big level 1 field trip with science and maths going up the Waitaki Valley, collecting a whole lot of data for a whole day.
Yep.
And before that, I wanted to unpack climate generally in New Zealand. And I thought about doing a mini practice task, sort of a little bit like 1.5, saying where's the hottest place in the school and does that influence where people sit, just so they could prepare to use data, bar graphs, line graphs and stuff like that, not assessed.
Yeah.
But it also gives them a bit of background jumping into level 2 if once we jump back to the old system. Is it worth doing something like that, or am I better just to scrap it and not do it at all? I kind of wanted to do it because I wanted to play with Survey 123, which I haven't used for ArcGIS, but I don't know if that's the sort of thing we can do.
Well, I think that's really good teaching and learning, isn't it? Because the students are actually seeing where they're learning how to collect data, process data, present data, and then hopefully they're then able to use that presented data to help them understand what they see. And then long term to be able to go, well, actually the best place to sit and have lunch is blah here because.
Perfect.
Look,
and then I'm sort of linking to level 2 as well without them knowing it, so they're not coming in cold.
Yeah, and so that would be really good. And I would be thinking about maybe your piece of research that you're doing with the data that maths and science and you're all collecting, maybe that's enough. Maybe they don't need any more.
Okay, because we're going to unpack how the Waitaki Valley has been formed. So we're going to do a little bit on volcanics, a little bit on glaciation, a little bit on the landforms and fluvial and all of that sort of stuff, but very, very general, like very unpacking it generally. Like volcanics would be like 2 lessons or something like that, and nothing, just scratching the surface.
Remember, this is foundational stuff, so we don't need to get into it in a big way.
Perfect, thank you.
Nice.
Mary, apologies for not actually having looked at the exemplar you've already written for this. But when we come to actually designing an assessment, are we expecting them, if we, like level 3, when they're doing their, and I know, research with guidance, but and like the graphing question in the skills and concepts thing, at level 3, they have to know what sort of technique to apply to the data to create the right graph, or, that sort of thing. Are we expecting at level 1 that if we give them a set of climate data, that one's straightforward. Our climate data, they automatically know to create a climate graph. If we give them a table with, say, population change over time, they'll hopefully know that they do a line graph. But, unlike level 1 skills now, where we tell them and level 2, where we tell them what sort of graph to draw from the data, are we expecting them to have the skill that they can look at a piece of data and work out how to process it? Even though technically, as you say, we're not marking their processing, we're marking their presentation of data, or are we? And they're writing about it.
So we're not marking their presentation of their data, we're marking how they use that to explore the environment. You're not going to tell them to draw a bar graph.
Right, okay.
Tell them to draw a line graph. So this is why I say it's really important to teach those skills over and over again. And you can say to them, there's no reason why you can't say, oh, here's some data about the population of greymouth over time. Oh, when we do that, that could be a line graph, and maybe the kids write down line graph. But you're not telling them what kind of graph to do. Because technically they should be choosing
the right form to present the data.
And the thing about it is, and whilst you're not marking their presentation, it's really important to still teach them how to present the data, to do some good graphs and things like that, because that's what we do in geography. It's just we're not assessing that.
Okay, technically that skill set is going to get assessed in 1.4.
Well, in a sense,
maybe.
in terms of interpretation of information. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
How about Oxford and Friends? You've got questions? Or Amy?
For me, I've had a bit of a rough year, health wise, and so I'm definitely a little bit behind the 8 ball. So I'm just here to sit and listen and hopefully get some advice moving forward. So yeah.
Okay. I actually might help you with a couple of things around that. So one of the things I've been saying in my journeys around this country, if you can, don't do any assessment in term 1, if you can. And I'm saying this because use term 1 as your term to really kind of package up the skills and dispositions of being a geography student and the things that you want students to be able to do. And if you have to, because your school says you have to, then I would be suggesting that you did the 1.1 first, because the 1.1 is the one that's probably the most accessible for students. But so build in the skills and dispositions in your program through the term 1 at least. So teaching students how to draw graphs, how to interpret resources, how to write a paragraph, how to be a geographer, how to look at an environment and go, oh, that's an interesting place. So I would do that as much as I could in term 1. So lots of teaching and learning opportunities. Now, I know term 1 is the term we generally go out and collect data and do our field trips. I get that. But there's no reason why that has to then be assessed. You could still go out on your field trip at that time and save that data and use it later. So I know that's traditionally we've taught standards, and now what we're going to be doing is we're teaching geography.
Yeah.
And I'm just making that slight little change in our approach to being teaching some good geography, and then later on, oh, now let's have a look at this information to explore the Grey River or the Waitaki River or wherever I'm looking. So I'm really kind of thinking about this. Is that maybe a little piece of advice, Amy, that could be useful?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are you hearing? Oh, sorry. Let somebody else have a go. Sorry.
Okay. Hey, just a couple of questions from me. Are they now locked in, Mary? Are they going to tinker with them anymore?
Yes, there's implementation on them.
They are locked in. So
No, it was all right. I just didn't want to get carried away and then them tweak them on us or slightly change them or adapt them.
Yeah, my understanding, Justin, as best I can, is that they are locked in for next year. So there's no changes from now on. Whether there's any changes at the end of next year, as a result of everybody doing it, I have no clue. I can't crystal ball that. But what I can say is they are what they are.
And then the other thing from me was then, have we had much feedback from those pilot schools that have had a go at it as to sort of things that are good to do, things to avoid, like the plague?
Look, here's what there has been a little bit of feedback, and we've had a few pilot HUIs and bits and pieces. Generally, most of the pilot schools have loved doing the pilot because they can teach geography rather than teach the standards. So that's the first thing that I will say. Second, sometimes contexts have been a little bit more difficult. So contexts where they've used for assessment has been a bit more difficult. So that's something to really keep in mind. Don't do anything too weird. Don't kind of decide, hey, I'm going to look at the spatial distribution of vape stores across New Zealand. You know, there's kind of, that's could be problematic. So keep to the my advice would be keep to something really knowable, if you like, when you're doing your assessment. They've really liked really focusing their teaching and learning program alongside the significant learning and the big ideas, and really thinking about those, and just kind of gone. And there have been a couple of pilot schools have done a whole lot of teaching and then go, well, I better do some assessment now. What shall I do? And literally a couple of schools have done that. So rather than thinking that assessment is driving what they've been doing, they've been thinking about the teaching and learning. Is that kind of helpful, Justin? I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think it's been super successful for everybody, because sometimes, and the key reason is this, and I'm just going to share my screen. The key reason is that oftentimes teachers haven't gone in and looked at and read this and this and this really clearly. So these are really important to be really making sure that when you're doing your assessment, you are actually looking at these things rather than something else. So sometimes students have wandered off on a tangent, which is in the teaching and learning, but they haven't in the assessment focused on this. Plus they have spent maybe too long on things. And in fact, this standard, you should be able to assess it within 4 periods. Okay. This one, which is about the 1.1. So be careful about really making sure that you really read these really carefully. And then alongside that, you can use the things that I've popped in on the website. So this one's about the phenomena. And again, what I've tried to do is to develop it a little bit more to make it so it makes sense. So that's kind of helping you about where it will go.
Yeah.
So is that helpful, Justin?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, and it has been a pretty rubbish kind of year for teachers, right? So throw that into it. It's made it a little bit more complex. So I wouldn't be going beyond the NCA pages for the kinds of topics you might do, or you could use the example. So I don't know if you've had a look at some of the things. I've put up some other assessments that you could use. So you can use the ones on the NCA page, or perhaps the ones that I've written. Try not to go too far beyond those. Now, I'm going to be honest, I wrote the ones on the NCA page.
Okay.
And I've written the ones on the Board of Geography Teachers page. So they kind of reflect exactly the same. And once you've kind of been in the game for a bit longer, then you'll be able to go, oh, I'd rather look at this now.
Yeah.
But, keep your assessment simple.
Mm.
And remember, the assessment is just like a slither of learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, it's fair to say, Mary, that I think personally, I'm pleased to hear that. I just hope that we can actually individually write programs that are actually embracive of that fact, because it's fair to say that over the years we have become more and more assessment focused because we're trying to meet the needs of our students' demands. I see you nodding, Justin. Do you agree? I hope. And the good geography is taught along the way, because I insist on teaching good geography because I'm passionate about my subject. I like the about face of it, but again, I'm mindful that I need my students to be the best prepared for their assessments, because at the end of the day, that's the other thing they take away, as well as the good learning, is the credits. Okay. On your journeys, Mary, this other external, right?
Just hold on a minute, Glenys. I think I had a question from the Oxford and Friends people.
Yep.
Justin, did somebody, I don't know your name. You were sitting next to just, yeah.
Mel
Yeah.
Greenwood.
On
I was just wanted to ask, the schools who did the pilots, I mean, is there any useful resourcing or information that they found that was really useful? You know, it'd be quite handy if they actually had, you know, shared some information that they found quite good, especially in regards to, you know, some of the natural processes. How do they teach that? I know we all know the basics, but it's getting that student based information. You know, I'm sort of at that stage where I'm trying to develop material now, and am I double handling? Has someone got some good ideas?
Well, unfortunately, all of the pilot schools except for one was based in the North Island, and most of them looked at Tongariro as their case study for their natural processes, or they looked at a beach. So actually, I wrote some resources for the pilot schools based on that kind of idea. So they are under 1.3, so they are linked there for you. One of the schools in Wellington looked at kind of the that they were mostly pretty locally based kind of things. So that's where I can't really help you because of where you are. But if you have a look at the two examples, you might see kind of the level of kind of its foundational stuff. Yeah, I can't really help you, Mel, around that. And the one school in the South Island looked at the Southern Alps as kind of, and the natural processes operating in the Southern Alps, so glaciation and tectonics for the 1.3.
Are they not teaching all of the processes, you know, foundationally, and then focusing on two, say? I mean, I thought the whole idea was to teach foundational and to teach everything, you know.
Yeah, they probably have done, but in terms of their 1.3, they focused on two things, for example. They might have looked at,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know if there are any resources that they're happy to share or anything.
It seems if you're a pilot school, though, really you're leading the way. If I was a pilot school, that's what I would have been doing, trying to create something that's going to be useful for everyone. But anyway,
I have asked them if they will share some resources, but it's been a tricky year. So if I find something,
I've got a really blonde question. And I know it's not about assessment, but currently, if you do an issue, for example, and the kids didn't do very well, you have the opportunity to do it again in a completely new different context and do a complete whole reassessment. With the new curriculum, we're only assessing once, is that right? Or are we if we're doing like 1.1, I've got multiple, you're doing it like different ideas all the way through. Do you do more than one assessment, or is it just once? And I know it's not about assessment, but that's my question.
Yeah, look, maybe in term one, you do some kind of formative thing with the students around spatial distribution of a phenomena. Maybe in term two, you do your assessment, and maybe you have some of the kids in the class didn't get it. Why not offer them another opportunity? Look, honestly, it's 800 words. It doesn't take long to mark. It's not ages and ages and ages. So I did moderation for schools. They would send me 8 pieces of work. I mostly could mark it within about half an hour. So keeping that in mind, there's no reason why you couldn't do another one later on in the year. Now, your school will surely, at the schools I've taught at, there's always been a policy around reassessment opportunities. So there's the NZQA rules that apply, but then there's the reassessment opportunities that your school might have. Just as an aside, those rules that go from not achieved to achieve still apply. So that applies. But if you offer a further assessment opportunity, my understanding is you offer it to everybody in the class and they all get an opportunity to do it again and improve their grade. Why not? And in a way, do it as late as possible is helpful, because in term one, they're year 10 students plus a few weeks.
Yeah.
So keep that kind of in mind. Bernard, you've got a question about 1.3.
Yeah,
So about 1.3. So I was thinking about doing. Obviously, we've got the Alpine Fault coming right through next to the west coast. So I was thinking about doing plate tectonics and fluvial processes, and then I was thinking about the scale of it and where to go on a field trip. There's places down south on the west coast where you can actually go and see, I guess, where the Alpine Fault's coming out. So it's really good. And there's also, I was thinking about a smaller place. It's called Whataroa, and just before the town there's an alluvial fan. And I was wondering, should I do a small area and look at so you've got the Alpine Fault and you've got this Whataroa River coming down and this alluvial fan with where the farms are located on the floodplain there. So I'm just wondering, do you do a smaller area, or should I go larger scale and look at the west coast? Yeah, just a question about that. Sort
Look,
of
I think
1.3.
I think it's probably easier for students. I'm just looking at where it is. So south of Harihari, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I would keep it as small as you can to help students really embrace that kind of idea. But maybe your teaching and learning process is about, well, how did the Southern Alps form? And
Yeah.
then we're going to dig into that one little place.
Right.
So you might look at, because you're going to explore an environment of the Grey River, you've already done some work around fluvial processes, and now we're looking at a different place, if you like. So that could work really beautifully.
Okay, so how did the environment form? And you have to draw diagrams and things,
Yep.
things like that within that. I've looked at the assessment. I've sort of forgotten it a little bit, but so you'd be drawing diagrams of the Alpine Fault, the type of fault it is, and then a sort of an alluvial fan and a diagram of a river.
And probably they might have a map to show the location of where this place is. How do you say it? Is it Whataroa?
Whataroa, yeah. It's slightly north of there.
Okay, I can see on the map where that is.
Sort of that area.
So
There's not a lot there.
there doesn't have to be a lot there. But the thing is one of the things to really keep in mind is there's some kind of one of the excellence part of the standard is about implications. So there some implications for people around that.
Yeah.
So make sure, and I'm imagining there are some.
Well, the implications, so I thought you've got there's only one road going north to south. So if that road washes out, then there's implications there. There's also the farming in the area, so they have to get their produce north and they have to get the supplies in as well.
Yeah.
So, and the communities that are slightly south of there, like Franz Joseph and Fox to a lesser extent, they need to come north to the major service centres like of Hokitika and Greymouth to get their supplies.
Yeah, so
is that enough? Or
yeah, I think so. Like I probably would avoid doing, say, the whole of the Southern Alps, just for example. But I might look at like if I was doing this next year, I live in Auckland, so I would go to Omaha Beach and look at the coastal processes there, and there's an estuary, so I'd look at fluvial as well. One of the key things is they have to have two processes, but they don't have to link them.
Oh, okay.
So the processes don't have to be linked. So in your case, Bernard, you don't have to link tectonic processes with the fluvial processes creating alluvial fan. So
I thought you had to do interactions, but
so they can be completely separate, which is brilliant. And you can have one process that's more significant, say, than another. So the students end up, when they're writing their report, they need to they could write 2/3 of their report about one of their processes and the other third about another.
okay.
Yes, so don't think of them having to do A equal or B, that there's some kind of linkage. There might be, but there doesn't have to be.
Yeah. There's plenty of actual linkages with those two processes, but
They
okay.
don't have to talk about that.
They don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Right. Anything else?
Mary, we've been told we're only allowed to offer 3 assessments.
Yep, good idea.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about not doing the processes, but processes is key throughout my program.
Yep.
Is that a sensible idea, or would I be better seeing processes as so key throughout my program, look at processes and not doing global challenge? But I quite like the idea of a global challenge.
Look, most schools who have been given that instruction from their senior leaders is that they will do both the internals and probably do the geographic challenge one, which is the exam at the end of the year. But the expectation is you're still going to be teaching about natural processes and how they
100%. That's my program.
And it's probably your base of your program, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really good way. The other thing to keep in mind, because we have to go back in 2025 and teach these kids level 2, it's useful to, like, if you do, let's say you do traditionally 2.4 skills and 2.6, the new 1.4 is actually quite good prep for that. It's not the same, but it's kind of quite good prep. And if you don't assess 1.3 with the students, you can still do those things, and that might help prepare for, I don't know, if you're doing 2.1. I don't know. So unfortunately, we have to think about what happens next in level 2, which is a damn nuisance in some ways, because that wasn't the plan. Just on that, don't look on the NCA website anymore at the level 2 standards that are sitting there. They are not the ones that are going to be offered. So I'll show you what I mean by that.
Oh,
I think I've already told you this already.
Yeah.
But these standards here, so just do this and close them off, because they went out for consultation last year, and basically we've rewritten them. So they're in the process of being rewritten completely. So nothing is the same. So just forget about them. Okay. Just develop a cool, wonderful, fun geography program for your students.
Yeah.
Kate, I see you've been really quiet. Have you got any questions?
Hi, kia ora koutou. Sorry, I don't know if you can see me or not. It looks like I've been fiddling with my settings. Sorry, it's not me being antisocial. It's just more lack of tech. Anyway, you kind of actually just answered my question. So our schools has told us only to offer 2, maximum 3 standards, which is nice, a bit of a change. But I was sort of just wondering about any potential gaps going into the old NCEA if we cherry pick with the standards, or is just teaching those big ideas kind of enough to get them through with what they need going into level 2?
Like, teach them the skills, Kate, that they'll need for level 2, but hold tight to the big ideas and the significant learning that's for level 1. So
yeah.
Do you know what I'm kind of saying? So and if you're only doing 2, then you've got a lovely scenario to choose which ones you do. I know what I would do if I were in that situation, but but still teach kind of all of those things in the significant learning. So looking at resource use and looking at a whole range of things within your programs is really important. Yeah, and what you choose is entirely up to your school, up to you really, Kate, what you want to do. And I think but hold tight to the significant learning, really. Yeah.
Okay, great. And if
Mary,
you were just going to, if you were just going to go for 2, Mary, do you have a recommendation at all, or
Okay, I'd do one.
what you've seen with the pilot schools?
Yeah, I'd do 1.1 and 1.2.
Okay, great.
I
And
mean,
I just have, sorry, one final question. I know that there was the Mātauranga Māori Zoom earlier in the week, and I just couldn't make that. I was at a field trip with some other students. I was just wondering, did that get recorded, and are we able to access it by any chance?
Yes, Kate, it was recorded.
This is a question and answer. Yeah.
I'm sitting up.
And it will be.
I'll give you my mistake.
Can I just see a cat come across there, Pip?
I'm at home sick.
Okay. Kate, it was recorded. It hasn't quite. I will send you a link to it eventually once it's been done, whatever it has to be. I didn't record it. It wasn't done by me. So I will be sending out a final email to you all, which will probably come next week. So
Okay.
I will send that next week.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Oh, Justin, question.
Hey, sorry, just something that came up at our HOD meeting that people need to be aware of now. Some of your schools, this may not be an issue. If next year you don't have students that have got the literacy and the numeracy requirements, some of your standards, and funnily enough, geography, English, and history have standards that count towards numeracy and literacy. Now, the thing you need to know if you're only offering 2 or 3 standards is if those credits are used for their literacy and their numeracy, they cannot be double dipped on. So they can't then use them towards their 60 for their level 1. So there is a chance that you could have a student that requires 3 of your standards for literacy and your other standard for numeracy, and therefore the 4 standards they offer in geography, none of that 20 credits counts towards their NCEA. Now that's for, I think it's just for next year only, or it might be the year after as well. 2 years. So for the next 2 years, but just something for you to be aware of. If you're only offering 2 or 3 standards, at the end of the day, the students need to be aware that if they're going to use your standards for that aspect of their NCA that they need, they can't double dip. The debate, swearing and cursing that happened at our HOD meeting are just something for you guys to be aware of. If you're only offering 2 standards, they may actually, apparently, and I don't know how the heck this works, if they get merit or excellence and they're going for merit or excellence endorsement, they still count.
Yeah.
But they don't count towards your 60.
Yeah.
And I find that bizarre world. But
Yeah.
So they can get.
just thought you better know that if you didn't know that.
Yeah. So they can get geography endorsed with merit, for example, by if they've got 3 standards. But they may not count for the NCA. You're quite right, Justin. Something to think about. Alrighty, anything else that kind of is top and center?
Just on that endorsed situation, as it is now, they have to have an internal and an external. Will that still apply?
Same.
Okay.
But if you're only offering 2, then you're not going to get there anyway, because it's the 14 credits.
Yeah, no, look, I'm waiting for a directive or not a directive as to whether we are 2, 3 or 4, to be honest.
Right. So I would be planning my program irrespective of the assessments, just think about what's my program going to be. Make sure you've got some physical geography in there. Make sure you've got some human geography. You've got some population about where do people live and why do they live there kind of thing in your program. And then also make sure you've got some geographical challenges in your programs that you're talking about and looking at through the year. Just, you might like to, I'll actually just, actually, I'll just do this. So this is a copy of the pilot assessment booklet. So this year, this is the booklet that the students got prior to the exam. So so prior to the exam, they got some information. The location was the Cook Islands. So they got a map like this. They got some writing about legends and stuff about the Cook Islands. They got some stuff about how coral atolls are formed, some climate information. And so when you look at this, we can see you now, Kate. And so it will look a little bit like, so when you look at it, it looks a little bit like a current 1.4 skills paper. So it's kind of, and you will have time in class to spend a couple of weeks with your students to really digging in and finding out where that location is. And then on the day, they got some further information, which I'm just going to maybe. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So they got some further information about the Cook Islands. So, and I don't know where these things are kept, right? So I have no idea where they are, but they got a resource that was about COVID in the Cook Islands, facts about COVID, something about deep sea mining. So you can now see there's kind of a question about the Cook Islands, tourism, economy, and then we've got deep sea mining kind of thing, and then some concerns about deep sea mining. And so there was so the students had to, when they actually sat the exam, they had to make a call about what the geographical challenges for the Cook Islands. They had to be able to think about, should they do tourism or should they do deep sea mining, kind of weigh those up. And then they had to think about, well, if we do, whose viewpoints and perspectives should really be listened to. So in your programs, you will be able to do all of that. And one of the things I've put on the Board of Geography Teachers page is I've put some examples of what that might look like. So just in case you haven't had a look, down here, there's some examples of resource booklets for Otago, Vanuatu, Rodney, and Northland. So those are what they might look like. And here's kind of what the questions might look like. I will be adapting these to fit with the questions, the kind of questions they asked, and then what I think the marking schedule might look like. Now, one of the things that worries me a little bit is that I don't know when we'll see exemplars of 1.1 and 1.2. That's an interesting little thing to think about. I've just sent an email before I joined you all today to say, hey, they need to see them ASAP. And the external exemplars also, we need to see them as soon as possible, but I'm understanding that may not be till May, but I don't know that. So I will be letting you know ASAP where these things are. So that's just some kind of little asides.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else? I hope that was kind of useful for you. Just remember, if you would like me to look at your unit plans, your programs, or things like that, I'm really happy to do that. My second message is don't make things too complicated. Use the exemplars or the examples that are either on the Board of Geography Teachers page or on NCA page. So, if you want, a couple of people have come to me and say, I want to do something on blah, blah for my spatial distribution. I'm writing a few others and I'll be putting them up there for everybody kind of to share. So there'll be lots and lots of examples. Two other things that probably I forgot to say. One, you will need to have derived grade exams if you're doing the 1.4. Who will write those? Well, someone will write them. I will, if I'm still employed in this job and people still like what I do, then I will write some. So I'll write a New Zealand-based one and a Pacific-based one for teachers that will be available. Second, the 1.3, there is no derived grade. They either do it or they don't. So it's an external, done internally, marked externally. You can do that whenever you want in the course of the year, no problem. But you don't submit it to NZQA until kind of October, and then the kids don't get their results back until January 15th or whenever they get their results back. So it's a bonus for that is you don't have to do any marking around that. But do build in, and on the website it talks a little bit about teach the students how to write a report if you're going to be doing that standard.
Yeah.
Mary, just had a wee question. I in the past have always bought those skills books, the 1.5, 1.4 skills books. Do you think there's a new resource coming out that would better support these new standards, or just what would you do skills book, workbook wise?
Well, I would be just teaching them the skills within your program. So if you're doing something around population growth, say, giving them some data from Christchurch, for example, about the growth of Christchurch, and maybe they'll see a little dip around the time of the Christchurch earthquake, and you can kind of dig into that. So if you can include the skills into your program rather than teach skills, if you like.
Yeah, great, cool.
So I personally think I don't know anybody who's writing any resources other than me.
Right. Okay. No pressure then for you.
Well, I think just kind of build those into your program as best you can. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all right. Any other questions? Josh, was that helpful for you?
Super helpful, thank you. I've been frantically taking notes, and I'll go away and start putting a whole plan together and reading through a lot more content this afternoon. So yeah, really good start for the day. Thank you.
And look at, if you want me to look at your programs, I'm really happy to do that. I'm working through the holidays. I'm not saying you should. It's just my contract, so I don't really have a holiday. But if you think you'd like me to have a look at something, kind of 15th of January, you think, oh, I better get Mary to have a look at it. I'll be able to look at things. So I'm happy to do that. I might not do it immediately, but I will do it as soon as I can. So, yeah. Cool. How about Oxford and Friends? Are you all good up there?
We're good, thank you. Yeah, no, that's been really helpful. With my new role, I've been dipping in and out of it. So to get my head back into it's been really good, Mary. And Mel's shown me the plan that you created. It's on your website. It's really, really good. So we're gonna have a bit of a look at that and see how we can suss it out for us, and trying to link it, as you say, to the old level 2-3 situation, because I don't want to get too carried away with the glaciation Southern Alps thing if the year after my level 2-3 teacher wants to teach South Island High Country as their external area. So just a bit of negotiation, a bit of working through that.
So just on that, remember this level 1 program is really foundational. So it's just really broad brush rather than going into the details. So think about that. So maybe setting up it so the students, when they come to do the South Island High Country, they kind of know a little bit. You don't have to teach them about basic plate tectonics because they've already learned it, if you see what I'm saying. But yeah, last thing I'm going to just give you a little bit of a heads up, just so you know, the level 2 standards will not be, the new level 2 standards are not a follow on from the level 1s. Okay. So there won't be a spatial distribution standard at level 2. Okay. And if you have a look at the matrix for level 2, there's a bit of a theme there. So I think I've spoken about this with you guys before, but there's a little bit of a theme there. So think about what the theme is, and that might help you think about what that might look like. We're really hoping that some of the new standards will kind of mean that you can use some of the stuff you currently-ish do. I think. I'm hoping. Yeah. Anyway, well, good luck for the rest of the day. I hope you've had hope this was useful. Any last questions? Bernard.
So you've got a Zoom call from 11 to 12. So what's that? Is that similar to what we've done?
It's the same. I just wanted, this was really designed for people in small departments who kind of, you might not have people to chit chat to, just, but this is kind of, the Zoom call is really for anybody in the Canterbury region who has, so if you go away and in half an hour you go, oh, I wish I'd asked that question, you can come back. It's more of a drop-in-y kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
I don't see you again
Thanks,
before
Mary.
Christmas. Have a happy Christmas.
Thank
And,
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bernard,
Bye.
say
Have a
hi
good
to
day,
Lindsay
everyone.
for me.
Yes, and thank you for your help 4 years ago. You're amazing.
Don't tell me it was 4 years ago. God, I'm old.
Look at me now.
And I won't say where I know you from, Glenys, because that just makes me feel quite young then.
Hey, look, the word 40 springs out there for me, Justin, and I'm proud of it.
See ya.
See ya.
So yeah, have a good day, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.